Welcome to Real, Raw, Reinvented, the space where real stories, raw emotions, and powerful reinventions come to life. This is where we dive deep into the journeys that shape us, challenge us, and ultimately transform us. Today's episode features the incredible Monica Rivera, a Tedx speaker, personal brand strategist, and a true force for helping people find their authentic voice. In this powerful conversation, Monica shares how loneliness, something so many of us fear, became her greatest teacher. We'll explore how she turned profound loss into radical self-love, how she redefined being alone, and how embracing solitude can lead you straight to your purpose. Get ready for an honest, empowering, and deeply moving journey. Let's get real, let's get raw. Let's get reinvented. Monica, it is amazing to have you on Real Raw Reinvented.
I'm so happy to be here. One, because I get to see your beautiful face, and two, because I know this is going to be an amazing conversation.
I am equally excited to be in this space to see your beautiful face. Before we get started, I did want to say it's so interesting how I meet people in the virtual space, and I've never met them in real life, but I consider them to be my great friends. I for sure consider you to be one of those where we have not yet met in person. You're coming down to Miami though. I know it. I feel it. I'm manifesting it. But I consider you to be such an amazing soul. You do amazing work, but also you're a great friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it almost feels weird to say that we haven't met in person because I just
Yeah.
feel like I've known you for such a long time and we've had such amazing conversations that it's like that's the last piece to just meet in person and give each other a real life hug.
I have to tell you, I'm a crier. I never used to cry when I was a kid. It wasn't that my parents didn't like crying. I think maybe it made them a little bit uncomfortable because it was always just kind of like, wipe those tears. Latin parents can be something.
Hmm.
So I never really allowed myself to cry when I was younger. And through my own healing journey, I've allowed myself to feel all of the emotions, like to really be able to feel them all. And now I cry all the time. So I'm just forewarning you that when I see you in person, there's likely going to be a flood of tears because it's just an emotion now that it just comes out. It just comes out whether I'm happy, whether I'm sad, whether I'm full of joy and bliss, I'm crying.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. Happy tears, sad tears. I cry all the time. Something I'm watching on television, something I read, a memory. So we are in alignment with that too.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're allowing me to share that crying experience with you because it's something that is for sure going to happen. And I think that what I'll do is I'll have like a video, a camera, so that we can film the moment.
Yes. Yes.
But we are here to talk about an experience that I have to tell you, I watched your TEDx talk about this experience of loneliness and your story of loneliness. And it made me think a lot about the loneliness epidemic that I don't necessarily think we're talking about enough. And how social media, which has been one of the biggest blessings, we use it in our own businesses, we use it to showcase our own personal brands, has actually created a lot of loneliness, especially within the younger generation. And so when I was listening to your story of loneliness and your transformation of loneliness and the real freedom that you feel now, I had so many things that came up for me in terms of what's going on globally. It's such a necessary topic to talk about, but we don't talk about loneliness enough.
We absolutely do not. And I think the reasons are really two-sided. So if you are the person who's feeling lonely, there's a lot of shame around expressing your loneliness. One, because what does that mean to be vulnerable in that way? You also don't know how it's going to be received by the other person. So there's this subconscious thought, am I safe to say this? Will it matter if I say this? Which can be almost worse than not saying anything at all if you don't get the reaction that you hope for. But then, on behalf of the other person who is hearing that someone is lonely, there's an awkwardness that exists. People don't necessarily have the language to respond to someone who shares that. And again, it's part of it is because we don't talk about it enough. It isn't normalized, so people don't know how to respond to that. And so there's an awkwardness or a discomfort when someone expresses loneliness and the other person sort of goes back and forth with, can I give you a hug? Can I send you a meme, something to sort of cheer you up? Not understanding that loneliness is different than sadness. It's
Mhm.
deeper than sadness.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I'm trying to reflect on the times where people that I've cared about, friends or family members, have said that they felt lonely. And I immediately went into that same feeling of I want to help them change the situation or the emotion. And it's almost kind of like because you have a loved one or someone that's experiencing that, you go into action oriented mode. How can I give them something, provide them something, do something? But I have to tell you that there were also times where people came to me and said that they were lonely. And it's sad for me to admit this, but I felt like they were trying to put a burden on me.
Mm, interesting.
Ask me to be that person to provide them with something, either an extra phone call or checking in on them or something. So I felt like I sometimes gravitated between, well, what do you want me to do with this?
Hmm.
There's nothing that I can do to change this for you. And what can I do to change this? So I think you're right that when you approach someone with that feeling, it's hard for even the receiver to know what to do to support you.
I mean, that's real, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think sometimes when people say that, that is what they're asking for. Oftentimes,
Mhm.
they may also not have the language to be able to articulate what is it that I need. Because if we think of loneliness as a state, and sometimes even beyond just an emotion, it's a prolonged state, there's not really an assuredness of this is the thing that's going to change it. It's almost this experimentation that they're asking of someone else. And maybe it is a phone call. There's someone that I know now who is an older gentleman, and he asked someone who is in his building who's younger, can you check on me just once a week? Can you just knock on my door and maybe come in and watch Jeopardy with me? And it was just this really sweet moment. And going back to crying, when I heard my friend tell me the story, I started to tear up because it takes a lot of courage for someone to be able
Oh,
to ask
yeah.
that, because it is very vulnerable.
That is so much courage. In fact, when you said that, asking myself, would I have the courage to ask someone to support me in the way that would really help me in terms of my loneliness? Because I consider you to be such an independent, such a strong minded, strong willed woman. I consider myself that as well. But there are times when I get lonely. And I don't even sometimes want to look at that because when I look at that, it's like, well, then what do I do with that? What do I
Right.
do with my own loneliness? And it also brings up a lot of feelings of, well, why am I feeling lonely? Which can be
Mhm.
attached to relational traumas, lots of different things. So I think sometimes, even as the person who is feeling it, it can be so challenging to accept that you are simply lonely.
Right. Because I think of the question usually becomes, what am I making that mean? And so there's a myriad of ways that we can make that, what we can assign meaning to that loneliness. So it can mean something about us, it can mean something about our world, about the people in our lives. And then we can just completely rabbit hole down into, is it our choices of who we're choosing to have in our lives? Could we have done something differently? So it can really snowball into a very overwhelming feeling if we decide to explore loneliness in that way. But again, there's always different ways to look at it, but oftentimes it can be really hard to confront that. But I truly believe confronting it is one of the only ways to diagnose how you can then work yourself out of that state.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to look at it to go through it. Like you have to
Yeah,
shine that light on it to
you
really
do.
be able to go through it. I want to talk about your story. You have a TEDx talk that I watched, and it was incredibly powerful. I recommend that everyone watch this TEDx talk. And you talked about what happened to you on April 1st, on April Fool's Day a few years ago, that triggered massive transformation and change in your life and triggered this feeling of loneliness. Can you walk us through what happened?
Sure. So it was a beautiful, sunny spring day. It was a Saturday. I remember it so clearly. The sun was shining so brightly through the window, and it was those big, puffy clouds in the sky. And I received a phone call, and it was my grandfather on the other end. And my grandfather, I'm Puerto Rican and Cuban. My grandfather's Cuban. He has this big, barrely voice, Monica, come to the hospital. And
Mm,
then he said the words that I'll never forget, your mother is dying. Now,
mm,
to set the scene, my grandfather was very dramatic, and he he was very he was someone who exaggerated quite a bit, and he could be an alarmist. And I thought to myself, there's no way. He must be exaggerating because I had just seen my mother the day before and she was in
mhm,
good spirits. I
mhm,
remember her feeling so clear and level headed and energetic. And it was a complete contrast. How could you say I just saw her not just 24 hours before, and then to receive this phone call that she's dying? My mind was like, there's no way this could be. It has to be that he's exaggerating. And so I called a cab because we didn't have Lyft or Uber at the time. And I called a cab, and I remember that entire ride, just my eyes staring into the back of the cab driver's head, wanting him to go faster and faster, and this anxiety that was really bubbling up in my stomach. When I get to the hospital, it was a complete 180 than the woman that I had seen the night before, to the point that she couldn't speak anymore. And I
wow,
couldn't understand what was happening, but there was no time to even ask what was happening because it was happening. I knew that she was dying. And I believe that she waited for me because I was by her bedside and I held her hand. And I remember she would flutter her eyes here and there. And she turned towards me and she saw me and we connected. And I told her that it was okay. I told her that I would be okay as her only child and that she had fought as hard as she could and that it was okay. And
wow.
so then she passed away.
Wow. You know, you said that, and my grandma passed away in December, and she passed just a few moments after my father got to her. And we all said that she waited, you know, she waited for him, and it made me realize, you know, how strong these women are in our family, how strong these women are, and how much love they have for their children, that they wait for you. That's a really powerful story, but it didn't
Mhm.
end there. You
It
also
didn't.
lost multiple family members after that, right?
I did. And so my mom is the story that I talk about most, and I specifically talked about in that TEDx talk. But she was really the second person that had passed away, 6 months before my grandmother had passed away. And that was the first time I felt I'd ever really lost someone that I was close to. My grandmother was my favorite person in the world. And that was really hard. And then 6 months later, it was just under 6 months to lose my mom, felt like a 1-2 punch you could never imagine. And then after that, by sad fate, I started to lose the rest of my family members. So I'm an only child. My mom was an only child. My dad had one brother, and it felt almost as if dominoes cascading in a line. My family members started to pass away from different things that were happening. And over the course of the next 7 years, I lost all of my biological family.
Oh my God. What was it like to go through that level of grief? I mean, I think that most of us wouldn't even be able to understand what that level of grief feels like, looks like in an everyday instance. Like, what was it like to go through that?
In a word, it was devastating, but in more than just a word, it was also happening at a time in my life where I was still a teenager when I lost my mom. And
Mm,
so you're going through all the normal teenage things of your brain isn't fully formed yet, but yet your brain is now normalizing these experiences as it's developing and maturing. I'm figuring out first how to graduate high school and apply to colleges and what school am I going to go to and how am I going to pay for it and all of these normal things that people would ask of themselves around that time, while also simultaneously figuring out how to live without the most important person in my life and the change of dynamics. I lived with my mom and what that was going to look like now. And then now I'm in college and these deaths continue to happen. And it was so hard to figure out how to grow up and navigate these firsts that I was experiencing with college life and all of those things, while also losing the people that I loved and thinking, what is this going to mean for me? What is my life going to look like? How am I going to survive? These were all these big questions that were plaguing me for such a long time. And it was day to day. Some days I would feel great. And then there would be periods where I just wouldn't go to class and I was completely disconnected from everything. And it's so difficult to truly describe the roller coaster of emotions that you feel. But I will say, unfortunately, by the time the last person had passed away, there was a lot of hardness that developed. I was
Mm,
desensitized in a lot of ways at that point because I needed to steel myself from the grief, from that pain. And so I feel with every loss, I outwardly expressed it less than I did the person before, but it
mhm.
didn't change how I felt inside. It was just a longer journey to emotionally tap into what that loss meant. And then it became this is life. And I needed to switch to how am I going to survive? Because now I'm truly by myself and on my own. I don't have a net, I don't have a couch to sleep on. How am I going to figure out life?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, and so many things that you said that I'm thinking in my mind. I mean, first off, I can't even imagine what this experience is like for you to now have to say to yourself, okay, now I have to survive as a teenager. You mentioned that with each passing, with each death, you got harder, but it almost sounded like a coping mechanism. Do you ever feel like that hardness went away, or do you still have it? Did you fully heal from the experiences? I'm curious because so much of that sounds similar to some coping mechanisms that I've even done, where I've just shut myself off. I'm like, this is a part of life. We're just going to push forward, move forward. But it always seems to catch up with you.
Absolutely, that it does. I think I became very goal oriented during that time. So focus
Hmm.
on the goals. And as long as you keep your eye on the prize, it will help you get through it because it becomes your mission. I will say, I've always been soft centered. And what I mean by that is, even if I presented hard, I don't think I ever really changed on the inside. I just needed to cope and needed to protect myself a little bit, and more than protect myself, I needed to gather myself and figure out what I was going to look like as an adult, who I wanted to show up in this world as, what it meant to be this person who was on their own, and what did these new relationships that I was going to build, whether it's friendships or existing friendships, what shape were they going to take. So it was much more of an assessment process, if I had to describe it that
Hmm.
way, of how was I going to now show up. And that maybe to other people might have seemed as if I was hardening myself. But again, there was a component to that, but really it was an adjustment. I need to adjust to the shock of everything that's happened. And I need to adjust to now I'm an adult in this world with a real job and real bills and all of these things. And what is that going to look like?
I love that you're saying this though, because what I'm almost kind of hearing is I knew that healing had to happen, but there was also real life that was happening simultaneously. And so it sounds like there was a lot of healing that was happening internally, but you also had to keep yourself going. And I think that's such an important message is that you can heal and still be moving forward. You can heal and still be thinking about where am I going to go next? Where am I going to sleep? What am I going to do? We sometimes think that healing and life happen separately when they actually happen together. And in fact, as you're healing, you are shown different ways to live, to grow, to adjust, new opportunities. And so it's beautiful that you bring to light that maybe externally it seemed one way, but internally I was going through my process.
Mm. I will say this though, because I want to be completely transparent for people that might be experiencing the same thing. in the short term, so shortly after my mom passed away, when I had entered college that first year. So now imagine I'm a girl who grew up in the Bronx. I'm now going to school in upstate New York, which doesn't sound distance wise like it would make much of a
It's
change.
basically
But if
Canada.
you're
If you're
exactly,
from
that's
New York,
exactly what it is.
anything past the Bronx is Canada.
Yes, and it exactly felt as if I was entering in a completely new world. And being in that space allowed me to grieve in a way that I hadn't when I was still home. And I wasn't prepared for what that grief was going to look like. Because while I knew people there, and I was fortunate enough that some people that I had known from the Bronx had also attended the same school, the day to day living in this dorm room with a stranger as a roommate that I hadn't known before and not really needing to show up anywhere. There was no one to hold me accountable. There was no one to make sure that I actually attended the school building every day. I spent probably the first year, freshman year of college, completely grieving. And what I mean by that is I spent more time in my room than I did on campus. And my grades showed it. By the end of my first year, a freshman year, and I don't share this story very often, I remember coming down, it was the summer, and I lived in one of those pre-war buildings in the Bronx. I was going down the stairs, and there's these metal mailboxes that are these little slither, they're little rectangles, right? Where you almost have to shove your hand up to try to pull your mail down. And I pull down this mail and it's all balled up. And I see a letter from my school, from my college. And I instantly thought, well, this can't be good. I walked down into the lobby and I opened this letter. And again, it's funny. It's another sunny day because I remember the light coming through the window then too. And I read this letter and it reads that I'm on terminal probation. And my cumulative GPA after 1 year of college, and Jasmine, brace yourself for this, is a 1.0. A 1.0. This is me, the honor roll student, straight A's, captain of the cheerleading squad, president of the school, all of these things has a 1.0. And so I did what anybody would do at that time. I took the letter, I balled it up, and I just threw it to the side. And I went about my day. And as soon as I returned to campus, I got to work. It was dean's list every semester after that because the thought was there's no way I am going to throw away everything that I have built in my short life and in my school career and academia. There's no way I'm going to throw this away. It's
Yeah.
not what my family would want. It's certainly not what I would want. And then I thought, what would my future be if I threw this away and I failed out of the school? That is not going to happen. And it was as if a flip switched. And after that, dean's list, internships, after school jobs, and it completely changed and almost woke me up from where I was at the time.
I love how you talk about how you left, you went to college, and that's when the grieving process maybe caught up with you and you had to go through that. That's something you definitely had to go through. It's very similarly, we were just talking about this before we started the recording, but the year after I came to Miami, even though everybody looks at the sunshiny pictures, I have a great life here. But the year after I was here was one of the worst years of my life, where I hit every single point of rock bottom. I mean, to the point where I was just like, there's no way there couldn't be any more, and there's no way else to go but up. And sometimes I think the environmental change is required to activate that need for transformation within us. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because sometimes we are being led to, even though we may be fighting the change and fighting the healing, our bodies, our souls require it. And sometimes it takes us to a completely different place, even environmentally, to make that happen.
Absolutely. I think I needed that space away from all of my
Yeah.
school friends and neighborhood
Yeah.
friends and all of those things to really feel. And that's when it happened. And I gave it almost a full year and then we got back to
Yeah.
business.
That's funny. It was about a year
Mhm.
for me too. So we tracked
Mhm.
the same. We talked in the beginning about how difficult it can be to accept loneliness and also to verbalize and vocalize that you're experiencing loneliness. Do you have any suggestions for how individuals can accept that they are just feeling lonely and what they can do to then practice that courage, like your neighbor did, of asking for help and support? How do we accept this? And then how do we ask for what we need?
So it's interesting because I don't think I ever asked for what I needed. I asked myself what I needed. And so in the
Mhm.
TED Talk, I share a formula that I have for loneliness, which is curiosity plus exploration equals becoming your own best friend. And that was really the formula that I used for myself. The curiosity is about understanding what you like, what you enjoy, the life you want to live. So if you remember at that time, I was so young, between 16 and 23, so much of what I enjoyed was actually influenced by things my parents enjoyed, or my
Yeah.
family enjoyed. And now I had this opportunity to say, well, what do I enjoy? If anybody's ever seen this Julia Roberts film, Runaway Bride, it starts out where she leaves all of her weddings, but she loves the eggs as the partner she's with at that time. And after she becomes single, she actually tries all of the different eggs to figure out what she enjoys. That's
Mhm.
sort of what I felt for myself. I
Mhm.
was taste testing what I enjoyed and was really curious about what would this experience be like? What would that experience look like? And once I landed on some of the things that I want to go in this direction, then I moved to the exploration. And for me, that looked like travel. I did a lot of solo traveling. And I remember just me in a rental car driving up the Pacific Coast Highway, listening to music, at the Grand Canyon journaling, just crisscrossing throughout the United States and throughout other countries, figuring out what I enjoyed and just exploring, just seeing what life would be. One of the things, if I could say that there is a gift that comes out of experiencing this loss, is that my family, Latino family, very protective. Why do you need to leave home? The nest has everything you need. You live in New York City. Everything you could want for is here. Weren't really big into traveling. And I know that they would have had apprehension about travel and they would have put the thought in my head, is it safe and this and that? But I really had a chance to explore all different parts of the world on my own, spending time with myself, going through what I needed to go through. So that's why when you have the curiosity and the exploration, it equals becoming your own best friend, because that is what I needed. I needed to, one, build that self trust. I needed to build the navigation to where I wanted to go, what dreams I wanted to fulfill. And I would caution and suggest to everyone, really, go through that stage yourself, because when we look for the external source to give us what we need, one, it can be taken away, and then we're right back in the same place. We're always with ourselves. So if you can create that steadiness within yourself, it will make you, one, better for yourself, and two, better for all of the other people that you're around. You will have a true sense of self and a true North Star for how to move forward.
Gosh, I love this so much because the your own best friend. So my issue, and I realized this through my own healing journey, was that I always wanted someone to love me. And my parents, beautiful, wonderful souls and beings, they had me very young. So for a lot of my younger years, which we know are our formative years, I knew that my parents loved me, but they didn't provide the love that I was really truly seeking, right? Like feeling like I was loved. And so I went from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship in my adult life, seeking validation and love. And it wasn't until going through my divorce and healing after that that I realized that I had to become my own best friend, that I had to realize who is Jasmine as a single woman without seeking love from anyone else, just truly trying to love herself. And in your TED talk, you talk about being your own best friend is almost kind of like being a belief system. Like you have to adopt this, you have to take this on. But it sounds scary It sounds like it requires a lot of courage, maybe even confidence. How did you fully adopt this belief system of I am going to be my own best friend and I'm going to live this equation of curiosity and exploration and figure out who I am? How did you adopt that belief system?
So there was one particular moment I had a lifelong friend. She and I used to joke about we were 2 months and 2 days apart, and our moms had been pregnant with each other. And so she had been there through all of the passings that had happened in my family. And I remember after the last one, I was on the phone with her. And I remember it felt as if the dynamic had changed between us. And so I asked her, is something different? Did I do something? And she said, I have to be honest, you're just too sad all the time. And I remember feeling deeply, deeply hurt in that moment because this was my person. This was the person that had known all of my family and I'd grown up with. And she wasn't wrong. I was really sad. But I remember thinking, I don't I wish I could change it. I don't know what to do. Like I am really sad. This is really hard to experience. And in that moment I thought, I can't depend on someone else to help me change my feelings. I need to figure this out on my own. And so becoming my own best friend became really important, again, because I go back to seeking that external validation or that external support. And something you said really interestingly, I actually grew up feeling loved all the time. A lot of praise. We always told each other we loved each other. But what I think that did is I was so used to their love and so
Mm,
surrounded by their love that I don't think I knew how to love myself
mm,
because I was just receiving all of the love from them. And so part of the journey was, do I love myself the same way they loved me? Do I see myself in the same way they praised me, the same way they saw me, the same way other people see me? Do I see myself that way? And so that was the journey that I also needed to go on for myself that I don't think I realized that was part of it at the time. It was more, you got to figure this out. You're too sad for the people that have known you your whole life, and you don't know how you're going to be when you meet the new people in your life, and what is that going to look like? And so that journey was for me. I need to be okay with myself. If this external state doesn't change, I need to still feel happy with my life.
I love that. There's this book. It's written by a nurse and I think it's called The Regrets of the Dying. And one of the top regrets is not living for yourself. So when individuals are in their last stages transitioning to their next phase, that they all unanimously say, I wish I would have lived this life for me. And I think it's something that I think about a lot is, am I living this life for me? Am I loving myself? Am I giving myself the opportunity each and every day to experience all the glory of Jasmine and all the things that Jasmine wants? And it sounds like your equation of being your own best friend was understanding you, but also embracing all of you, figuring you out, but also embracing you. It's such a beautiful journey. I love it.
Yeah, it was. It's really powerful. And I think something else it underscores because I was so young, I was so close to death at such an early age to see what it was like. So while I've heard that book referenced so many times, I've never read that book simply because I know it personally. I've seen every single person as they went through their suffering and what they wished for, what they regretted, what they hoped was going to happen if they were released from the hospital. I heard those wishes told to me and the plans that people wanted to make with the hope that they would somehow be able to reach them. And being so young and hearing that was a reminder to me of how important it is to live now. So when I hear someone say, when I retire, or when the summer comes, or even when Friday comes, I think just do it now. Just if you have to put the trip on the charge card and pay it off later, I'd rather you do that than say you're going to do it when you retire and not know if you're going to get to that place. And so I think there's a balance between making sure we're not living recklessly, but also living intentionally now and not just preparing for the future that we're not sure if we're going to get to.
So I'd love to ask you, do you feel like you're living intentionally right now, or is there something that you're not fully embracing?
So it's interesting. I oscillate on that answer because with my business, I truly
Mhm.
love my business. I love the clients that I work with. I love the stages that I speak on and the companies that bring me in. I do think I've overcorrected a bit in leaning so into my business that
Mhm.
I haven't been as exploratory as I used to be.
Yeah.
And I'm called to do that more. So I'm at this point right now where I have to remind myself of that balance. Am I achieving that balance that I know is so important, that I know is critical for other people? Am I doing that myself? And sometimes the answer is yes, but right now in this season, more often the answer is no. And I'm reminding myself how important it is to really get back to that and know that
Mhm.
it's all essential. The business is important, but also if I'm not happy, then the business isn't happy in the same way. So those are the things that I'm learning for myself still. It's a
Yeah.
journey.
It's a journey, and that's why I ask, and I'm so glad that you said that because it so resonates with for so many years I made this business my everything. I made it every single part of my soul. And very recently, I realized that I don't even know what life is anymore. I went on a little soulful experience. It was like a sound bath, meditation, beautiful journey. And what came to me was that I've done a lot of really great healing work, but now it's time to have fun. And after that session, I still haven't figured this out. This was weeks ago. I'm still trying to figure out, what does fun mean? What is
Mm.
fun? Like, I don't, what is fun when it doesn't have to do with transformation? What is fun when it isn't
Mhm.
about spirituality? What is fun when it isn't about a business? I'm still trying to figure out what fun means to me. And so you're absolutely right. It is a process.
It absolutely is. And I love to have fun. That's the thing. I do love to have fun. And for me, fun is travel.
Yeah.
Fun is the beach. Fun is time outside, just spending time outside. And as you can imagine, when you're running a business, you're not spending a lot of time outside.
Right.
You're spending
Yep.
a lot of time behind a laptop and sitting on the same chair and hoping that you get up every time your Apple Watch reminds you to get up in that hour, right? And so those are some of the things that I know fun looks like that for me. Being outside is fun. Playing tennis is fun, even though I'm terrible at it. Walking on the beach, just being outside, connecting with people, and traveling, seeing new places lights me up. That gets my creative spirit going. I know people love New York City, but I've lived here for so long that when I see New York City, it doesn't get my juices flowing the same way. But when I
Mhm.
go someplace else where it's quiet and there's space and I can stretch my arms and not bump into anyone, ooh, that's the perfect time for me. That's when my creative juices are going. And I feel calmer and more present and more aligned. And that place is where I want to spend more time in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you described everything about South Beach. I live right down the street from the tennis court. I'm still trying to get you to get here, but it's okay. We're manifesting it. We're manifesting it. And I think that that is really what I am starting to realize is my fun too. I'm the happiest when I'm walking the dog in the sunshine on the beach. I am my happiest when I'm watching the sunrise. And when I was younger, fun was the bar and drinking and staying out late, and that is definitely not my version of fun anymore. So I think it's also just about what stage in life you're in too. So
Absolutely.
beautiful. There was something that you talked about in the talk as well about a Valentine's Day experience, about taking yourself on a date for Valentine's Day. And I used to take myself on dates all the time. And it's funny what I would get back from people. Some people would be like, "Oh, that's so cool. I wish I could do that." Or I would totally do that. And other people were like, "Are you okay? Are you all right?"
Mhm.
What was it like? What was it like traveling on your own? What was the experience going out and treating yourself to dinner? How did that feel?
So on that particular Valentine's Day, it is still truthfully one of the best Valentine's days I've ever had. And I think is because exactly what I wanted to do. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, and I've had other incredible Valentine's Day, but this was all about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to spend it. And it was a beautiful day. I remember after work, I went to the gym. I had a long, nice workout session, took my time. It was one of those luxurious sessions where you're not rushed and it just feels great. Had a nice shower, took myself to a restaurant nearby, had my favorite meal there. And then I went to a concert in Madison Square Garden. And I saw a
Wow.
band and I had great seats and it was a fun time. And then afterwards, I took an Uber home and I treated myself to the Uber and said, this is what we're going to do. And it was just a great night listening to some of my favorite music, eating great food, having a great workout. I just felt so content. And it's much better than sitting at home thinking about, oh, everyone else is out. No, I'm out too, and I'm having a great time, and I absolutely
Yeah.
loved it. And I highly recommend, 10 out of 10, recommend for everyone to do that.
Yeah, actually, I love doing it. And most recently, I ended up treating myself to a glass of wine and a delicious meal by myself here at a spot in Miami. And I ended up meeting a wonderful man, and we dated for a while,
There you
and it
go.
was all because I was just like, I'm gonna enjoy me. I'm gonna enjoy myself.
Yes.
And when you decide that you love yourself enough to just be with you, the energy
Mhm.
that radiates off of you is just magnificence, you know? It's like you just shine because you love
Yes.
you.
Yes, absolutely. And it was so fun. And I recommend that for everyone. I used to see movies on my own every Sunday. That was my treat. I would go to the first showing, matinee, see all my independent films and none of the people close to me wanted to see. And those are just things that I do and I still enjoy. I love walks on my own. And
Yeah.
so I am very comfortable in solitude, but I'm no longer lonely. And that's a great feeling.
Ooh, that's beautiful. I love that. Comfortable in solitude, but no longer lonely. Yeah, I would definitely say I agree with that 100%. So, all of this also triggered you to step into your podcast, to step into your purpose, to lean into your business. Tell us, how did that transpire? How did loneliness actually unlock your potential, your purpose, and your next step journey?
Absolutely. So, one of the things I mentioned before, living so long in survival. And that journey was a really long time because, again, you have goals and you set the goal and you knock it down. You set another goal and knock it down.
Hmm.
And then I had gotten to this place where I realized in my career, is this what I want to do? How much of this was rooted in what I wanted to do versus what I needed to do? So, one of the great things, and if anybody who's listening to this is a first gen can relate to, it's the very common advice of get a stable job, earn as much
Hmm.
money as you can,
Hmm.
don't rock the boat, all of those things. And so I was a really good listener to that. And that advice, even though as a child, I always wanted to do things that were more creative, and my idea of my career looked different than what my parents had wanted it to look like. But still, that advice, especially after everything happened, it was a reminder of, oh, that's right. Get that job, earn as much money as you can, don't rock the boat. And so I did that and I got the promotions and I had the team that I managed and all of those things. And I don't know what it was. It was not one specific thing as much as it was a culmination of many things where I
Hmm.
started to ask myself how much of this is by design versus by necessity. And as soon as you ask yourself that question, it usually means that it wasn't by design because if not, the question wouldn't really be coming up. And so that was gnawing at me just a bit. And that grew a little bit louder and a little bit louder. And then finally, I decided I was going to start a podcast. I was a listener for a really long time at that point. I'd listened about 10 years probably. I loved podcasts. I loved the intimacy of feeling almost as if you knew the person by just meeting with them every week in your earbuds. And so I started a podcast. I didn't know anything about it. I figured I'm going to teach myself all of the things. And in that process of doing something new, I lit myself back up. I hadn't realized it, but working in certain spaces that I was in, I started to doubt myself a little bit. there were a lot of reorgs that happened. And so the job that I had taken had changed shape as the reorganizations would happen in a company. And I was moving just a little bit further and further away from my intended path. And instead of realizing, well, this is why you feel this way, you're not exactly doing what you want to do even in this role. And so once I started to learn podcasting and the art of it, the editing process and interviewing incredible people, and also building my name and my brand in a completely different industry, I said, oh, I like this. I'm still the same person. I can still get things done and make this happen, but now I can choose what I want to do. I've created that safety for myself and that stability to be able to have more latitude, to make some different choices. And that's really what started the podcasting journey. And then now I work in personal branding and communications. And that was born out of that podcasting. I would say almost almost a graduation of podcasting, moving on from that to really now be able to have internships and fellowships with NPR. And I gave my first TED Talk within a year or so of starting my podcast. And those doors just started to open for me, and people started to know me outside of corporate America, Monica. And it was all because I decided to answer that call, which was to do something different and just give this podcasting thing a go.
That's beautiful. I love it. I love it. And this is why I love highlighting so many of these stories. I find that everyone's journey of some form of pain always unlocks some beauty at the end of it. There's always a transformation, there's always an unlocking of the next level of ourselves. And so I love that that created that for you. Now I'm curious if someone is feeling that feeling of loneliness, if someone is feeling that feeling of I feel so isolated, I feel so alone, I really don't know what to do. What would be your biggest piece of advice?
I say go back to the formula. It is battle tested. It has been tried and true.
Battle tested.
Curiosity
I
plus
love it.
exploration. Yes, curiosity plus exploration equals becoming your own best friend. Get really curious about who you are, your likes, your dislikes. Pay ruthless attention, just as you would someone that you were dating and looking for all of the red flags, green flags. I want you to look for for those same signs in yourself. Be really curious about you. And then when you land on those things that get you excited, I want you to explore them. And remember, it can be as simple as trying the restaurant that you walk past every day of the week. Go inside, give that proprietor some business, sit down and see if you like that. But it starts with these experiments where you can explore and see, does it match my curiosity? And in some instances, you're going to say, no, this is not actually what I want to do. And in other times, you're going to land on something that is unexpected and it will surprise and delight you. And in doing those two things in combination, you become your own best friend. And I promise when you have that trust in yourself, that confidence in who you are, and you really love your own company, that to me remains the cure for loneliness.
I love that so much. I have one other question for you. What do you think your mom would say about the journey that you've had these last few years and becoming the woman you are today?
I have asked myself that question a lot. I
Mm.
normally ask that on every anniversary. What would she think? Obviously, I'll never know the answer. I know only what I hope. I think it would probably be in some ways more than she expected, but knowing her, still not enough. Still, there's more you can do. There's
Those
more
damn
you can
Latino
reach.
parents.
Like exactly. There's still more. Keep going for that. Reach higher. But I also know that she would be immensely proud of the woman that I am, of the daring that I've had in my life, the way that I've really gone for it and not been afraid of the no. That would make her really excited and happy to know that I'm that way. And then she would say all that, give me a hug, tell me she loves me, and then tell me to go on and reach for the next ring.
I love that so much. And you're right, you'll never know, but I think you do know because I always feel like our ancestors reside within us. The people that we love the most when they transition still remain with us in some way. And I would have to say that I agree with that. And I think that she is challenging you to dream bigger because you deserve the world. I hope that you know that. You deserve the world, and I'm sure she is so incredibly proud of who you have become.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. That means a lot, and I will receive that.
Oh, yay! All right, so where do we find you? What are you up to? Tell us where we can connect with you and your greatness.
Thank you so much. So, if you want to learn more about me and what I do, visit my website. It's youwannadowhat.com. If you want to hang out with me on social, Jasmine, I'm sure will link it on
Absolutely.
on the platform. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Monica M Rivera, but I will warn you, there are many Riveras out there on LinkedIn, so it might be harder to find. So just go with the information Jasmine puts there. That'll be the easiest way to connect us. And really, what
Absolutely.
I'm doing, my mission right now is to continue to work with women who want to be seen, heard, and respected for their expertise, for the great work they do. I want them to be visible. I want them to feel confident in telling their story and have conversations just like this, and remind them truly my job is to be a mirror of the extraordinary women that they already are. And so that is my mission, to help people do that.
That is so incredibly beautiful. And I will link all of that 100%. Monica, thank you so much. I think that loneliness is something that we talked about this. We just don't talk about enough. And there is so much of an epidemic of loneliness happening. And I think it's across all ages, really, truly. And the more that we can bring light to the epidemic of loneliness and help people understand that there is something on the other side, and to use your formula, which I love, we can all get through it together.
We absolutely can. Absolutely. And let's normalize the conversation so that more people are talking about this and more people get to the state that we want them to be in.
Absolutely. The state of greatness. Thank you
Mhm.
so much, Monica, for
Thank
joining me.
you.
And thank you, everyone, for joining Real Raw Reinvented. Until next time.
Bye.